In this video, I'm going to show you how to publish a package to NPM, and we're going to automate the publishing of that package when we bump our version with a GitHub action. So I have an example here of a published package that I created recently called Keyed Promise, and basically this package just uses the promise.all and promise.all settled concurrency methods inside of JavaScript, but it allows you to use them inside of objects. So we have this example here of our data, which is an object, and then we have our named keys here, and then it just returns async functions, and then you can resolve all of these promises concurrently, and you get back an object with your keys, and it's all typed correctly. So this is a real package that you can go install right now, and you can start using it. And so I'm just going to demo what it is that we're going to be doing. So we can see here we have our index.ts, and basically this is all of the code that I want to publish as a package. This is all the logic inside of this package here. Then we have our index.test, and these are all of our tests to make sure our package is working correctly. And then if we go into the package.json, you can see this build script here, and we're using tsup to build the package, and tsup is going to handle everything for you. So it's going to build out a JS file, an MJS file. It's going to build out a types file for you and everything. In fact, I can show you how that works. So if we run npm build, you can see that it's going to build inside of this dist directory here, and we get our common.js file here. We also get our module here. So this is going to look exactly the same as our normal source code because we're writing it in module.js format. We also get our type definitions file here, and we also get a source map. The reason we get a source map is because in our tsup config, we have source map set to true. Okay, so the next thing is our GitHub action. So we have this publish action here, and this is going to publish an NPM package. And we have two jobs in here. So our first job is going to be test, and then our second job is going to be publish. So this first job, test, could just be moved into our publish job. They don't really need to be two jobs, but that's just the way I've done it. So you do it the way you want to do it, obviously. And then we're going to do this when we push to our main branch. Now, if you're going to have other people contributing, you also want to run your tests on every single push to any branch. And this action is not going to do that. You're going to have to set that up in a different action. So basically, we're going to run our tests, and this is just going to install pnpm, install our dependencies, and run our tests. Pretty standard stuff. Then we have our publish, and this needs test to pass. And we're going to check out. We're going to check out with a depth of 0, and this is important for a step later on. Then we're just going to set up our Node.js as normal. And then we're going to check version changes. So basically, we don't want to publish a new version of our module every time we push to our main branch. We want to see if we've already published that version of the module. So let's have a look in the package.json here. And you can see that we're at 0.1.4. So if I bump this version here, then I want to publish a new version of the package. So basically, this is going to check our package.json. And then we're going to get the latest tag. So if we go back to the GitHub repository, you can see that here in releases, I have these 4 tags. And these 4 tags are just different versions of the package that I've published. So we're going to check the tag, and then we're going to see if the tag is less than our package.json version. And if it is, then we want to publish a new version of the module. So then we're going to set up pnpm again. We're going to install our dependencies. We're going to build the module. Then we're going to publish the package. And we're only going to do this if our version has changed. And we set this version changed up here to true if our package.json is greater than our current tag. And then we're also going to publish a new tag if we've published the module. So you could swap these two around if you wanted to. You could create a tag and then publish the module. The reason that I've done it this way is because if our publish fails, I don't want to create a new tag. And I think the publish is more likely to fail than creating the tag. And we need to set the depth here because otherwise we won't be able to get the latest tags. It just doesn't work for some reason. Okay, so lastly, I can just show you how this works. So let's make a small change first. And this small change is just going to be console.log hello. And let's move that down into the function. And I'm just going to commit this change here, some change, and let's push that up. Now we can go into our GitHub actions And you can see that we have an action here for our some change. We're going to run our test, and this is very quick. You can see that we're already up to running the test here. The test passed, and then it's just going to do some shutdown. So again, you could move this into the publish step or the publish job if you wanted, and it might be a little bit quicker. You wouldn't have to set up node and PNPM twice. In fact, when we go to build it, let's do that way. And it couldn't find console, so let's just add a comment instead. Some change. Okay, so you can see here that installed the dependencies, it did the build and everything, and then publish to NPM didn't happen. And then we did our shutdown. So the reason that didn't happen is because you can see this check version change here. We got our latest tag of 1.4. The current version is 1.4. And then so the version is unchanged. Let's go remove this change here. And then we can run npm version patch. And now we've patched our version to 1.5 or 0.1.5. And then we can push this change up. So if you want to change the version, you can do a major, which is going to change the major, a minor, which is going to change that one here, or you can do a patch, which is going to change the 5. And you can do those with NPM. So you can say NPM version, and I've just done a patch, but you can do major, and it's going to change the major version. So if we have a look at this step here, check version change, you can see that the version did change from 0.1.4 to 0.1.5. So we created a new version of the package, and then we pushed it up to NPM. And then we can see here on NPM, it does tell us that 0.1.5 was published, and it was just published a few seconds ago. Okay, so let's dive into building this out from scratch. So if you check the description of this video below, you're going to see a link to a GitHub repository, and it's just going to be this dummy module that we've created. So if you want to copy any code from there, you can. But I've also included the setup steps. So if you get confused, you can just follow these steps. The first thing we want to do is to create a new project. So I'm in a new folder here, and we need to do pnpm init. And this is just going to create our package.json. Now you can see here our name is who to sub, and NPM is going to try use this name as your package name. And you can also prefix this with your name. So I can say Tom A. Nagel, which is my NPM.js name. And then it's going to publish it under this name here. The next thing we want to do is to install some dependencies. So we've got TypeScript, tsup, and vitest. The next thing we're going to do is to initialize TypeScript. So we can do this with npx tsc init. And then this is going to create our tsconfig file here. And I'm just going to remove all of these comments so we can see this a little bit easier. So I'm going to say include, and then I just want to include the source directory, so src. Then I want to exclude. And I want to exclude our test. So this is going to be ****star.test.ts. And then inside of our compile options, I want to set our target to ES next. We're going to set our module here to ES next. Then we're also going to set our lib to ES next. We don't need DOM because of course we're not using the DOM. If you are going to be using the DOM, then you need to do that as well. You need to set your out directory to dist, and this is going to mean that it builds into a folder called dist, which just stands for distribution. Our root directory is going to be our source directory, and we may as well make that now. So make dir src, and that'll remind us that we need to build inside of this source directory here. We're going to set strict to true. We're going to set ES module interrupt to true as well. Skip lib check is already set to true. We don't need to do that. I'm going to also set declaration to true. And then there's one last property that we need, and this is going to be our module resolution, and we're going to set this to node. So you don't need to type all this out. Just go into the repository in the description below and copy and paste it into your tsconfig file, and it's all going to work. So the next thing we need to do is to set up tsup. So we need to create this tsup.config.js. So let's just touch tsup.config.ts, and we can just copy and paste this into here. So basically this is going to tell it where the entry file is, and this is going to be our index.ts. So let's touch that file quickly so we know to put it in there. We know we need the format to be CommonJS and ESM. We also want to generate this .d.ts file, so we set DDS to 2. We want to set code splitting to, let's set this to true. And I want to set source maps to true. You can also turn this off and then clean, and this is going to clean the output directory before each build. Okay, so let's go back into our package.json, and inside of scripts, we can say build, and for our build script, we just want to run tsup, and then we can also have a test script here, and this is going to run vitest for us. So there's a few other things we need to do inside of our package.json, and I'm just going to copy and paste these in. So basically our main is where we can find our main file. So this is going to be inside of our distribution directory, index.js, and then our module is going to be inside of dis.mjs. Our types are going to be inside of dis index.d.ts. Our type is going to be module. We're not using CommonJS. And then inside of files, we want our dist directory. Let's also go and touch a .git ignore file before we could forget that. And we can put in dist. We don't want to push that up to GitHub. And we also want node modules into here. If you have a look at this keyed promise NPM modules, you can see here that we have our repository and our homepage. The reason that we have that is because inside of the package.json, we can put our repository, and then we want the type to be git, and then we can have a URL here as well. So this is just going to be our GitHub repository. So HTTPS, and this is going to be github.com/Tom does tech. And then our module is called who to sub. And then we can also set a home page as well. So we can just copy the repository, and then this is going to be homepage. Okay, so the next thing to do is to, inside of the index.ts, we can just start creating our module in here. So I'm going to export a const called KP, and then this is just going to be equal to 1. So basically some inspiration from my other module. We can also export this as a default. So right now the user is going to have to import a named version, KP, from, and then this is going to be who to sub. It's actually going to be at Tom A. Nagel /who to be sub. But we can also allow them to import a default version like that. So we can say export default KP. Okay, so now we also need to create some tests for this. So we can say index.test.ts, describe, and we also need to import describe from vitest. So let's run npm run test. Okay, so we get an error here, and this is because we don't have a vitest config file. So we can create that with a new file, vitest.config.ts. And this is just going to be your normal vitest config file. Okay, so let's run tests again. Okay, so we have an error in the ts config, and I've extended my test file here, but we actually just want to exclude. And we have, okay, so now we have a passing test. Okay, so now we have a module, and we also have a passing test for the module. The next thing we want to do is to create a GitHub action to automate the deploy here. So we need to create a new file, and this is going to be .github/workflows/publish.yml. And we can name our action here, and this is going to be publish npm package. Now we want to say on push to a branch, and I think our branch is called main. In fact, we don't have a GitHub repository, so we're going to have to do that before we can use this GitHub action. And let's give this some jobs here. So I'm going to skip test and I'm just going to do it all in the one job. So we can say publish runs on Ubuntu latest. We also want to use sorry, this is very confusing the way that it's done this. So our first step is to check out as the repository. And then we want to set our fetch depth here to 0. Okay, so the next thing to do is to set up Node.js. So we can do that with this action here that is pre-built for us. And we want to set the version to 20 or whatever node version you want to use. I assume you want to use the latest LTS version. So the next thing we want to do is to set up PNPM. And the reason I'm doing that is because I've used PNPM as my package manager. And if you've used NPM, then you don't need to do this because you've installed Node. But I think it's a little bit faster to use PNPM, and I prefer to use that for my local development. So I'm going to say set up PNPM, and then we can just use NPM to install this globally. The next thing we want to do is to install the dependencies, and we want to use PNPM to do that. So this is YAML, so you need to make sure the spaces are all correct, or the indentation is all correct. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to run my tests. So this is going to be name test, and then this is just going to run PNPM test. So if our tests fail, we're just going to exit here. We don't want to do anything else. So the next thing that I want to do is to check the version. And if we don't need to publish a new version, then we just don't want to do any of the other steps. We don't want to build, we don't want to do anything. In fact, you could put test in here as well. You don't want to test unless there's a new version, but our test is so quick that it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're going to give this an ID, and this is going to be called check, and then we're going to run, and then we need to use this pipe here because we want to run multiple steps, and we basically just want to run like a bash script here. So we want to set our current version is equal to $, and then we're using JQ minus R, our dot version, and we're going to get that from our package.json. So JQ is a piece of software that allows you to use JSON, basically. It does different things with JSON. And we're going to extract the version out of our package.json here. So then we want to get our latest tag is equal to $ get described tags, and then we want to set the ABB abbreviation to 0. Otherwise, if we don't get anything, then we just want to default this to version 0.0.0, which means that we're always going to publish a new version if we can't get this tags here. So I'm going to say dev /null or echo 0.0.0. Okay, so now we need to remove the V from the tag so we can compare it exactly to what's in our package.json. So we can echo our latest tag, and this is just going to be our latest tag variable, and basically this is just going to print it to the screen. Okay, so let's say latest version is equal to, and then we're going to say latest tag. Then we're going to use the pound symbol and V. So we're just going to remove the V from the latest tag variable. Okay, so now that we have our version from our package.json and our tag, and they're both in the same format, we can compare them. So I want to say if our latest version is not equal to our current version, then I want to echo version changed is equal to 2, and I'm going to put this in the GitHub env, and then we're also going to echo the new version, and I think this should be GitHub output, not GitHub env. Okay, so we have two variables here, version change set to true and a new version. Else, we're just going to set version change to false. Okay, so the next thing to do is to build the module. And to do that, we want to run npm run build. And then we only want to do that if our steps check, because remember we gave this an ID of check, our outputs and our version changed is equal to true. Okay, so once we've done our build, we want to do our publish. And so this is going to run npm publish. And I want to set the access to public, and I want to set no git checks, because when we do our install, we might change the git tree and we just want to ignore that. So if we have a dirty working tree, then let's just ignore that and we'll publish the module anyway. Okay, so to do this, we're going to set a node auth token, and this is going to be npm token. So we need to go to npm, get our secret, and we need to put that in our GitHub repository. And then after we've done this, we want to create a new tag. So let's say tag release. So we're going to run, and we're just going to set up some git config. So git config local user.email is going to be GitHub actions bot at usersnoreply.github.com. Actually, we need to pipe this as well because there's going to be multiple commands here. Then we also want to set the name to GitHub action bot. Then we can create a new tag with git tag -a. Then we're going to prefix this with version. We're going to get a new version, which we created up here in this step. And then we're just going to give this a message of the new version name. And then the last thing we need to do when we tag it is to push it to the origin. So we can do that with git push origin. And then we need to use our new version here as well. Okay, so let's make sure that we only do this if it's changed. So we can add this step in. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create a GitHub repository. So let's come over to GitHub. I'm going to click create new repository, and then I want to select Tom Does Tech, and this is going to be called who to sub. I want to set this to public so you can see it as well. Create the repository. So we're just going to follow these steps here. We're going to initialize, we're going to add well, we're not going to do this. We're going to add all the files. We're going to create a commit, set our branch, set our origin, and then we're going to push up to our remote origin. Say git init. We're going to say git add dot, and we can have a look at our working tree here to make sure that we don't have our node modules or anything else in there that we don't want in there. We can make a commit, set the branch to main, set our remote origin, and now let's push to our origin main. So we have all of our code here in GitHub now, and we should see our actions start to fire off. Okay, so this all ran successfully, but you can see that we didn't publish a new version because our check version here failed. So we have a missing something here, backtick on line 7. So let's just go have a look at this and make sure we've got it all correctly. Again, you can just copy and paste this from the code in the GitHub repository if you like. So it looks like I've spelt latest tag here incorrectly. Let's try fix that. And then before we push this, let's actually go over to NPM. And I'm logged into NPM. I'm just going to go over to my access tokens. Then I want to create a new granular access token. And this is going to be called publish NPM module. I want this to expire. So because we're using a granular token, you can't set this to never. If you're using a classic token, you could set this to never, but I'm going to make this a very far date in the future, long enough so I forget that I've done this, and when it breaks, I'll be super confused. Okay, so I want to give package and scope options, read and write, and I'm going to give it to all packages. So if you wanted to only give it to a specific package, then you would need to first publish that package from your command line, then come in here, create your token, give it to a specific package. But I'm just going to delete this token after I finish. Organization access, I don't need it to give any organization access. Then I want to generate the token. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to come over to the GitHub repository. In settings, I'm going to go to secrets and variables, actions. And then I want to create a repository secret. I'm going to paste that in there. And inside of our publish, you can see here that we're using a secret called NPM token. Now you could call that whatever you want, but in this case, I've called it NPM token. Paste that in there. Okay, so now we have our NPM token. Let's try publish this again. So I'm just going to say fix tag. Push it back up. And then we should see an action appear here called fix tag. Okay, so we have another error and it's saying 0.0.0 command not found. So it looks like it's getting this tag here and then trying to run that as a command. So let's go have a look. Okay, so I fixed this error, and the reason is because I didn't have any spaces here after the brackets in my if statement. So that is a requirement for this bash script. So with that fixed, you can see that our publish step here publishes successfully. And then we're going to tag with a new tag, and then we're just going to do some cleanup. One thing that I did have to do that I didn't have to do with the other package, and I'm not exactly sure why, is in setup Node.js, I had to set the registry URL to https registry npmjs.org. And I think it might be something to do with the fact that I published that on a different computer or something like that. So let me know in the comment section below what sort of NPM packages you're publishing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.